Hi guys, how are you all today morning? Good morning. Today is 22nd July 2023. My name is TSV Raghavan and I live in Chennai, Tamil Nadu, India. This is my spiritual vlog on YouTube. Haribol TRSV Nectar NECTAR Nectar. In this particular vlog, in all my previous videos, we have been discussing about the knowledge and information that we have gleaned through the study of spiritual books, scriptures, contemplation on the material universe, and meditation on the spiritual universe. This particular vlog and the video in this vlog is no exception to this rule. In fact, it is a mere continuation of what we have been doing in all my previous videos. Please subscribe to this video and this vlog so that I may keep reminding you of all my other videos. So let us continue with the topic for today's discussion. You may appreciate that for the past few videos, we have been trying to analyze the human psyche better than we have been doing in my past few other videos in the past other topics that we have already discussed. In these videos, we have been trying to analyze how this human psyche operates or exists and what are the factors that make up the ingredients for this human psyche. The psyche of every human living entity depends mainly on four factors besides others. These four factors are the slice of Sanchit karma called Prarabdha karma that this particular human living entity is born into a particular birth or lifetime to work out this Prarabdha karma. In other words, every human living entity takes a slice out of his or her Sanchit karma and comes into this lifetime to work it out in his or her lifetime. This slice is known as Prarabdha karma. However, besides this slice of Prarabdha karma, the destiny has bestowed one free will to every human living entity who comes into one particular birth in a lifetime. This free will allows that living entity to do something according to his or her whims, fantasies, preferences, tastes, atmosphere, surrounding, etc. in that particular lifetime. This karma, based on his or her free will, is known as Kriyamana karma. Prarabdha karma and Kriyamana karma are two factors that decide the psyche of a human living entity. Besides this, every human living entity has a brain in his or her gross body. This brain takes vibrations from his or her three layers of subtle body, mainly etheric senses, astral mind with feelings and emotions, and causal intelligence with logic. Vibrations that come out of these three subtle bodies are transmitted to the brain of the gross body of that particular living entity. This brain, according to the evolvement of that particular living entity, masticates on these messages or transmissions of vibration from the three subtle body and then further transmits the juice coming out of such vibrations to the gross body of that particular living entity. This is the third factor that makes up as an ingredient to make the psyche of a human living entity. The fourth is known as false ego. Every human living entity who identifies himself or herself with his or her body bases his or her operations during a lifetime on this ego called false ego. In other words, the false ego, where the person identifies with his or her body, plays a big role as a catalyst in the making up of the psyche of that living entity. Now, prarabdha karma, kriyamana karma, vibration from the subtle bodies plus false ego. The permutation and combination of all these four factors, along with contributions from other not so important prime factors, makes up the complete psyche of a human living entity. How this happens, we have been trying to discuss within ourselves through the study of several case histories which have become a part of our past videos. Today, the same will be in another case history that we shall discuss to understand human living entities' psyche better. This particular case history goes as follows. There is a very busy crossroad in the commercial capital of Bombay or Mumbai, the capital of Maharashtra in India. This particular crossroad, because of its busy traffic and prime location is extremely expensive real estate wise. In this particular crossroad, on one side of a particular road, there is a very huge property which is owned by a family in Bombay. This particular property has not only some residential quarters, but it also has one of the most lucrative motor garages in its premises. The owners of this property are filthy rich. In such a very affluent and wealthy family, one boy was born in the early to mid 70s of the 20th century. This boy was born with a golden spoon in his mouth in the lap of luxury and comfort. This boy was christened Salim. The prarabdha karma of this boy began the moment he was born in this family. He was to be born in a lap of luxury and comfort. This guy, as he grew up as a young man who was not only exceedingly thin, but who had a very protruding Adam's apple. The Adam's apple was so big that it took everyone by surprise when he or she looked at this boy. This made this boy quite conscious. First of all, he was exceedingly thin, and further, he had a very protruding Adam's apple. As a result of this, he was nicknamed Salim Haddi because his own name was Salim and Haddi in Hindi or Urdu in the Indian language means bone. Salim the bone or Salim Haddi became this boy's nickname. This nickname did not make this boy happy, but it was the only way he could be identified because Salim is quite a common name in the Muslim community in not only India but the world. Anyway, this physical appearance made this boy quite audacious, rebellious, and he was a rebel without a cause or a pause as he grew up. He wanted to be against the system that he grew up in. This boy, in spite of his build, became quite courageous and a daring type, a person who had a lot of negative energy and courage. Because this boy was so wealthy and brought up in such a busy causeway, he had several friends. One of his friends was a boy who was directly or indirectly connected to the thriving underworld of Bombay. Further, as the son of a garage owner. This boy began driving cars at a very early age. Driving a car very skillfully became this guy's first skill in his lifetime. This was all prarabdha karma. Being born in a household of a wealthy garage owner and driving a car became his prarabdha karma skill. But this guy would never know how it got blended with his free will and kriyamana karma. As of now, he was a very skilled car driver who used to help his father in driving cars and delivering them to the customers in Bombay. One day, this boy's father made a very lucrative deal in which a complete convoy of cars was to be delivered to the city of Delhi in north. By this time, this friend of him, of Salim Haddi, had become quite close to him. Salim Haddi was advised by his father to drive one of the cars in that convoy to Delhi, and then this guy invited his own friend to join him. This was probably Salim's first visit to North India, and that too by road. What this boy saw during this trip he liked a lot. Further, these guys were given an opportunity to spend a few days or weeks in Delhi before returning to get back to their job. During this period in Delhi, this friend met up with some of his underworld friends who had direct connections with the Bombay underworld. In other words, the gangsters of Delhi had contacts with the gangsters of Bombay, and this boy got in touch with those gangsters in Delhi. Salim accompanied him during such visits, and what he saw enamored Salim. Now his kriyamana karma from free will was slowly creeping in. Salim got very much intrigued and impressed by how the underbelly of the society operated. He was very impressed with its efficiency and resourcefulness. When he came back to Bombay, he requested his own friend to have him introduced to the Bombay underworld. The Bombay underworld is very, very powerful and it has quite a few gangs. One of such outfits is based in the Middle East in Asia, but which operates from Bombay because it originated here. This gang is known as D Company. This is headed by a notorious gangster called Dawood Ibrahim Kaskar, who has several very efficient underlings who do the dirty job for him in various fields in Bombay and the world. This friend introduced Salim to one of those underling outfits, and it was called the Chota Shakil outfit. This Chota Shakil outfit had its expertise in contract killing and mob hits. When this boy Salim was introduced to him, Chota Shakil first sounded this boy, came to know about this boy's background, and then he suggested that this boy should be hired as a hitman for the mob in the Bombay underworld. Naturally, because he was already a good mechanic and driver, this boy gained expertise in pistol and other firearm shooting too fast. Before anyone could know this, he had become an expert shooter and a sharp shooter. Slowly but steadily, the two friends began taking contracts on behalf of the mob to make several hits. Slowly but steadily, the exasperated and surprised police came to know that such an affluent and wealthy boy as Salim Haddi had now become a mob hitman and a professional sharpshooter. Because of a few murders, this boy was not only arrested, but a file was made for him, his background, and his whereabouts in the police station. This boy went to prison a couple of times. His family advised against this, but this boy's free will and Kriya Mana Karma were at full bloom. One day, this very boy took up a contract hit which made him a notorious hitman not only in the society but also in the Bombay underworld. There is a very famous builder family in Bombay which has struck several lucrative deals in the real estate. It is run by a couple of brothers who are known as the Kukarejas. One day, seeing this boy's expertise in shooting, he was given the contract to gun down one of those brothers. Salim Haddi took this job nonchalantly and gunned down one of those Kukurejas. This particular hit made him very notorious and a person who became infamous as a gangster and a hitman. Now, the police of Maharashtra was ardently after this boy. This shows how free will and Kriya Mana Karma of a particular living entity work. This boy's Prarabdha Karma brought him to a very wealthy family. He had his own property and garage. He was a good mechanic and a driver, and he could have done very well as a legitimate businessman in Bombay. But thanks to his own evil. Now, the very promising young lad had become a notorious hitman. When the Bombay police began hunting for this boy, he had to leave his family and his background for good. Now, this very wealthy boy with a golden spoon in his mouth was on the run for his own life. The Maharashtra police and its efficient machinery tried to hunt him down, but this guy managed to escape Bombay for good. He vanished without a trace to some other part of the country and he was AWOL for a few years. Ultimately, one police informer in a township called Indore informed the police department in Indore that this very Salim Haddi was very much in Indore and he was working as an auto rickshaw driver and was living with his own family in Indore. Nobody in his right senses would have believed this when he heard this because this boy was from a very wealthy family and it was not necessary for him to eke out a living as an auto rickshaw driver. However, there was a surveillance from the police of Indore which watched this auto rickshaw driver for some time, and one day the Indore police nabbed Salim Haddi and brought him to the Indore police station. The Bombay police was promptly informed about this arrest and the Bombay police came to Indore to take charge of the situation in the case of Salim Haddi. Salim Haddi was handed over to the Bombay police. Nobody could believe this. One such respectable businessman family member who had been nabbed by the Indore police because he was hunted by the Maharashtra and the Indian police for several murders. Salim Haddi was brought to Bombay by the Bombay police without the knowledge of his own family, which had washed its hands of such a black sheep in the family several years ago. This boy was brought to a police station in the outskirts of Bombay to, to record him or register him for a murder in that area. When Salim Haddi tried to escape the police during this transit, he was shot dead through encounter by the same police and he died a dog's death in the very streets of Bombay where he had haunted for several years in his lifetime as a very wealthy, successful, legitimate businessman from a very respected business family. This shows how several factors operate in making up the psyche of a human living entity. His prarabdha karma made him, Salim Haddi, a very wealthy person, but his own kriyamana karma made him to go wayward and into the dreaded underworld of Bombay. This also made him a killer because of his own perverted and warped false ego, and further, vibrations from his subtle body were masticated by his own brain in such a way that the permutation and combination of such mastication and the juice coming out of it and transmitted into his body made him a dreaded gangster and a killer instead of a legitimate and respected businessman that he was supposed to be when he was born in that wealthy family. This makes us understand how the psyche of a particular living entity develops. Let us take the case of Salim. His Sanchit karma till then was quite positive, and as a result of that, a slice from that Sanchit karma, which was called Prarabdha karma, was so positive that he was born into a respectable, wealthy businessman family. But his free will and kriyamana karma in this particular birth made him go decidedly negative, as a result of which, if there is some residue of his unworked karma from the kriyamana karma of this birth is still available, this residue, along with his own residue of unworked prarabdha karma, will be joined to his sanchit karma, thereby deciding on the coloring of the future slice of prarabdha karma he could be born with in his next birth. This boy was hardly 32 when he was dead. So, naturally, there must have been a lot of unworked Kriyamana karma in his lifetime in this birth. Hence, this guy has to be prepared for a not so positive birth as he had been having till now in his several births in this material world. The next few births may be quite negative or decidedly disadvantageous for this particular living entity. We all must take a leaf out of the life of a person like Salim Haddi to realize that we must not only be positive in our existing sanchit and prarabdha karma, but we must always be far more positive and spiritual while using our own free will and our own kriyamana karma that comes out of that free will. Only then our own karma will be better and our future birth will be far better than what they have been till now. This is the only way to become more and more successful materialistically, slowly go into spirituality, seek self realization, one day work out all the karma in our store, become liberated from the endless cycles of birth and death, and then realize our true self as a spirit soul, and finally get delivered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This has to be our aim in our own life. Kindly let me know what you think of my talk on this particular case history and this particular subject about the psyche of a living entity. Please give me your own expert views, thoughts, and ideas, plus opinions, so that I may blend everything together for the sake of this society. Before concluding, let me remind you that I am also a published author with Amazon Kindle and paperback. I write on spiritualism, fiction, and assorted subjects. Spiritualism happens to be my favorite subject. Till we meet in my next video, it is good morning from TSV Raghavan.